March 1943, North Atlantic. Another convoy burns on the horizon. 23 merchant ships destroyed in 5 days. The Admiralty's depth charges sink harmlessly past German U-boats while Britain starves. Then, Commander Howard receives blueprints for a weapon his peers call bloody ridiculous. A spigot mortar firing forward instead of aft, breaking every naval doctrine. His chief engineer laughs. "Sir, this contraption looks like a garden fence." But the statistics buried in classified files reveal something extraordinary. While depth charges achieve a 4% kill rate, this absurd device hits 25%. The weapon they mocked would sink more U-boats than any other British innovation, and the Germans never understood why. February 4th, 1943. 03:47 hours, 400 miles east of Newfoundland. Commander James Howard stood on HMS Vannock's Bridge, watching orange flames consume the SS Newton Ash. The merchant ship's cargo of aviation fuel transformed the freezing Atlantic into an inferno. Burning oil spread across black waves, illuminating 43 sailors drowning in their life jackets. The temperature was -8 degrees Celsius. Most would be dead in 12 minutes. This was the 7th ship convoy SC-118 had lost in 2 days. Howard's depth charge racks were nearly empty. The Type 7C U-boat responsible had already escaped. Again, the tactical problem was brutally simple. The moment Vannock passed over the submarine's estimated position, dropping depth charges blindly into the void, their ASDIC sonar went deaf. Explosive shockwaves obliterated acoustic contact. The U-boat would dive, turn, and vanish. Depth charges killed an estimated 4% of targeted submarines. The other 96% escaped to sink more ships. Britain was losing the Battle of the Atlantic. Since September 1939, German U-boats had destroyed 1,764 Allied merchant vessels, 8.5 million tons of shipping. Food imports had dropped by 1/3. Rationing reduced civilian diets to 1,800 calories daily. Women queued 4 hours for a single egg. Children developed rickets from vitamin D deficiency. The Ministry of Food projected that if losses continued, Britain would face mass starvation by autumn 1943. Churchill called it the only thing that ever really frightened me during the war. The strategic mathematics were merciless. Germany built U-boats faster than Britain could sink them. Admiral Karl Dönitz had 212 operational boats in February 1943, with 16 more launching monthly. Each U-boat cost $250,000 and required 41 crew. Each British destroyer cost $2 million and required 180 men. German Wolfpack tactics meant 3 U-boats could massacre an entire convoy, while 12 escort vessels floundered, dropping depth charges into empty ocean. Howard had attended a classified briefing at Western Approaches Command in Liverpool on January 18th. The mood was funeral. Captain Frederick Walker, the Royal Navy's most successful U-boat hunter, stood before a chalkboard covered in failure statistics. "Gentlemen," Walker said quietly, "we are losing this war. Our depth charges require us to pass directly over the enemy, then guess his position while deaf and blind. We are killing 1.7 U-boats per convoy. They are sinking 12 ships per convoy. Unless we fundamentally change how we fight, we will not see Christmas." The Admiralty's Directorate of Miscellaneous Weapons Development had proposed a solution: the Hedgehog. Howard reviewed the technical specifications with mounting disbelief. Instead of dropping explosive barrels astern, Hedgehog fired 24 spigot mortars forward in a circular pattern. Each bomb weighed 35 pounds. Impact fuses meant they only exploded on contact with a submarine's hull. If they missed, they sank harmlessly, leaving sonar contact intact. The weapon looked absurd, a framework of steel rails mounted on the foredeck, resembling a garden trellis more than naval ordnance. Howard's chief engineer, Lieutenant Davies, called it a bloody vegetable plot. The gunnery officer suggested they plant tomatoes. The crew nicknamed it the egg rack. But Captain Walker saw something different. At the Liverpool briefing, he presented field data from HMS Westcott's first operational deployment. The Hedgehog fired. 24 bombs hit the water ahead of the target. Sonar contact maintained. 17 seconds later, 3 explosions. We saw oil, debris, and human remains. 1 U-boat destroyed in 17 seconds. No second attack necessary. No pattern running. No guesswork. The statistics were extraordinary. Between December 1942 and January 1943, 5 Royal Navy corvettes equipped with Hedgehog engaged 9 U-boats. 4 submarines destroyed. The 44% success rate eclipsed 42 months of depth-charge warfare. Admiral Max Horton, Commander-in-Chief Western Approaches, ordered immediate production. 200 Hedgehog systems were being manufactured at Birmingham Small Arms Company and Stokes Motor Works. But institutional resistance was ferocious. Rear Admiral Geoffrey Blake called Hedgehog a circus contraption unsuited to professional naval warfare. Destroyer captains argued that forward firing violated doctrine established at Jutland in 1916. A warship's weapons face aft, Blake wrote in a scathing memorandum. We attack submarines by passing overhead. This device proposes we throw bombs like medieval trebuchets. It is tactically unsound, operationally unproven, and aesthetically offensive. The conservative naval establishment dismissed innovation born from desperation. Hedgehog's inventor, Lieutenant Commander Charles Goodeve, was a Canadian university professor recruited to the Admiralty's ragtag Department of Miscellaneous Weapons. Professional officers viewed him as an amateur, meddling in matters beyond his comprehension. The weapons development team included a school teacher, a chemist, and a mechanical engineer who designed fairground rides before the war. Howard stood on Vannock's frozen bridge, watching another merchant ship die. The U-boat responsible had escaped 90 seconds after he'd dropped his last depth charge pattern. 43 men dead. Another 5,000 tons of food, fuel, and ammunition sinking to the ocean floor. Britain was being strangled, and the Royal Navy's primary weapon was failing. Vannock was scheduled to receive Hedgehog installation in March, 3 weeks away. Howard watched oil flames dance across frozen waves. The convoy's survivors were hypothermic, dying in cork life jackets, screaming for rescue while more U-boats circled in the darkness. Britain had 18 months before starvation forced surrender. The depth charges had failed. The escort carriers were too few. The Americans were still building their fleet. Everything depended on a weapon that looked like garden furniture and broke every rule of naval warfare. Howard wrote in his diary that night, "We have 3 choices: accept defeat, pray for miracles, or trust that unconventional problems require unconventional solutions. The Admiralty has chosen door number 3. God help us all." March 12, 1943. 09:15 hours. Liverpool. HMS Vannock entered Gladstone Dock beneath slate-grey skies. Liverpool was Britain's beating heart in the Battle of the Atlantic, and Germany knew it. Luftwaffe bombers had devastated the city during May 1941, killing 2,500 civilians and destroying 10,000 homes. Entire streets were rubble. Warehouses collapsed into the Mersey. Cranes twisted into skeletal monuments. Yet the dockyards functioned. Ships were repaired, refitted, and returned to sea within 72 hours because delay meant death. Commander Howard watched dock workers swarm Vannock's foredeck. 18 men in grease-stained overalls, working in freezing rain, installing the Hedgehog system that would either save his ship or sink it. The weapon looked even more ridiculous in daylight. A rectangular steel frame, 3 meters long, mounted with 24 spigot mortars arranged in 4 rows of 6. Each mortar held a finned bomb resembling a metallic pineapple. The entire assembly weighed 100 kilograms. Chief Engineer Davies stood beside Howard, rain dripping from his cap. "Sir, that contraption blocks forward gun arcs. We've lost 20 degrees of 4-inch gun traverse. If a U-boat surfaces ahead, we can't shoot it." "Then we'd better ensure it doesn't surface," Howard replied. The installation took 14 hours. Welders worked through the night beneath arc lamps, sparks cascading across wet steel. Electrical teams ran firing cables to the bridge, connecting Hedgehog to the ship's ASDIC targeting system. The weapon's operational theory was elegant. ASDIC tracked the submarine's position, calculated range and bearing, and fired automatically when the target entered Hedgehog's 250-yard effective range. 24 bombs flew in a circular pattern 40 feet in diameter, creating an unavoidable kill zone. But theory collided with brutal reality during training exercises off the Isle of Man. March 15th. HMS Vanek engaged a practice target, a wooden frame rigged to mimic a submarine's acoustic signature. Howard pressed the firing button. The Hedgehog discharged with a thunderous roar, 24 bombs arcing through rain. Then silence. No detonations. 24 splashes. 24 failures. The practice target remained intact. Lieutenant Davies consulted technical manuals. "Sir, the impact fuses are designed for steel hulls. Wooden targets don't generate sufficient concussion. We've just proven the weapon works as designed." "Excellent," Howard said dryly. "Shall we send a telegram to Admiral Dönitz requesting his U-boats use softer hulls?" Training continued for 6 days. The crew learned Hedgehog's temperament. The weapon's electrical firing system failed in heavy seas when salt spray corroded connections. The spigot mortars required precise angle calibration. 2 degrees of error meant bombs missed by 15 yards. The system needed 4 minutes to reload, an eternity in combat. If the first salvo failed, the U-boat would dive deeper, forcing Vanek to reacquire sonar contact while other escorts engaged. But Hedgehog's strategic advantage was invisible to the enemy. Unlike depth charges, which detonated whether they hit or not, Hedgehog bombs only exploded on contact. When depth charges missed, massive underwater explosions announced the escort's position, warned nearby U-boats, and confirmed the attack had failed. Hedgehog missed silently. The submarine commander heard 24 splashes, then nothing. No explosions. Was it a new weapon? A dud attack? Should he stay deep or maneuver? The uncertainty created psychological pressure that depth charges never achieved. Royal Navy training doctrine emphasized this advantage. Commander Walker addressed Howard's crew on March 20th. "Gentlemen, you must understand what the Germans experience. Their hydrophone operators hear your Hedgehog bombs hit the water. They wait for explosions. Silence. They report, 'No detonations, Capitan.' Perhaps surface ship dropped practice markers, but their captain knows British ships don't drop practice markers during combat. So what did they drop? Unknown weapons? Advanced mines? The uncertainty corrodes confidence. They stay deep longer. They maneuver more cautiously. They make mistakes." The psychological warfare was complemented by tactical doctrine. Hedgehog attacks began 200 yards before the submarine's position, when ASDIC contact was strongest. Depth charge attacks required passing directly overhead, losing sonar contact at the critical moment. Hedgehog maintained continuous tracking. If the first salvo missed, the attacking ship could adjust bearing and fire again without losing the target. But operational reality was unforgiving. HMS Vanek rejoined convoy on 176 on March 25th. The convoy consisted of 43 merchant ships carrying steel, grain and aviation fuel from Liverpool to Halifax. Escort force, 6 corvettes, 3 destroyers. Intelligence estimated 8 U-boats shadowing the convoy. The weather was horrific. Force 9 gale, 30-foot swells, horizontal sleet. Seawater flooded Vanek's bridge. Ice formed on rigging. Visibility dropped to 200 yards. At 02:33 hours on March 27th, the Norwegian freighter SS Inger Elizabeth exploded amidships, torpedo strike. The ship broke in half and sank in 90 seconds. 47 crew killed. Vanek raced toward the last known bearing, ASDIC pinging frantically. Contact, submarine bearing 047 degrees, range 800 yards. Howard increased speed to 15 knots, closing for Hedgehog range. At 600 yards, the ASDIC operator shouted, "Contact fading, sir! Target diving!" At 400 yards, contact lost, sir. Howard faced the tactical nightmare every escort commander knew: fire blindly and hope, or wait for sonar reacquisition and risk losing the submarine. Depth charges demanded firing immediately, but Hedgehog worked differently. Howard maintained course, trusting the system. At 300 yards, Asdic regained contact. Target acquired, bearing steady, range 280 yards. Howard pressed the firing button. The Hedgehog roared. 24 bombs flew through darkness and sleet, invisible against black sky. The crew counted silently. 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15 seconds. Then boom! A single underwater explosion. Not the massive detonation of depth charges, but a sharp, focused blast. Oil erupted to the surface, glowing green under Vanuk's searchlights. Debris followed: wooden planking, cork insulation, a Kapok life jacket stamped with German text. The U-boat had been hit, but not destroyed. It was wounded, leaking, diving deeper to escape. Howard fired again. The second Hedgehog salvo disappeared into darkness. 20 seconds later, nothing. No explosion. The bombs sank past the damaged submarine. Contact lost. The U-boat escaped into the abyss, trailing oil, but alive. Vanuk had achieved what depth charges rarely managed: a confirmed hit, but failed to secure the kill. The engagement revealed Hedgehog's operational reality. The weapon was devastatingly effective when it connected, but connecting required skill, training, and fortune. Unlike depth charges, which blanketed the ocean with explosions, Hedgehog demanded precision. Over the following 3 weeks, Vanuk engaged 6 more U-boats. 2 destroyed outright. Spectacular kills marked by massive secondary explosions as torpedoes detonated inside ruptured hulls. 4 escaped. The 33% kill rate matched Hedgehog's early combat statistics and obliterated depth charge performance. But each engagement refined doctrine. Howard learned to fire salvos in sequence, not singularly. He discovered that attacking from multiple angles forced submarines into predictable maneuvers. He realized that Hedgehog worked best when paired with aggressive depth charge attacks from other escorts, herding the U-boat into Hedgehog's kill zone while it focused on avoiding depth charges astern. By mid-April 1943, Western Approaches Command had equipped 37 escort vessels with Hedgehog, combined kill rate 22%. The weapon was proving itself not through revolutionary technology, but through fundamental tactical advantages: maintaining sonar contact, psychological uncertainty, and precision strikes. Britain finally had a weapon that killed U-boats faster than Germany could build them. May 8, 1943, Kriegsmarine Headquarters, Berlin. Admiral Karl Dönitz reviewed casualty reports with mounting fury. April had been catastrophic. 15 U-boats lost in the North Atlantic, 38 across all theaters. May was worse. 12 boats destroyed in 8 days. The Royal Navy had deployed something new, something German intelligence couldn't identify. U-boat commanders reported forward-thrown weapons, silent attacks, and precision strikes without warning. But the reports were contradictory, incomplete, and often posthumous, recovered from survivors of sunken submarines. Korvettenkapitän Ernst Bauer's testimony was typical. His boat, U-618, had attacked convoy HX-237 on April 30th. We were at 80 meters depth when we heard splashes ahead, many splashes, perhaps 20 or more. We waited for depth charge explosions, nothing. Silence. I believed the British had dropped marker buoys. Then, impact. A massive explosion amidships, flooding in compartments 3 and 4. We surfaced and abandoned ship, 6 minutes from splash to sinking. What confounded German analysts was the weapon's selectivity. Depth charge attacks produced dozens of explosions, most missing the target. This new weapon produced silence until it produced death. Did the British have acoustic homing bombs, advanced contact mines, forward-firing depth charges? The Kriegsmarine's Technical Research Command investigated captured equipment from HMS Harvester, sunk by U-432 in March 1943. British sailors reported a forward-mounted spigot mortar system before they were taken prisoner. German engineers reconstructed the weapon from prisoner descriptions: 24 projectiles, 35 pounds each, contact fuses, forward-firing arc. The technical specifications seemed primitive, almost laughable. How could such a simple weapon achieve devastation that depth charges could not? The answer lay in doctrine, not technology. German U-boat tactics presumed that British escorts attacked from astern, dropping depth charges blindly while sonar contact failed. Standard evasion: dive deep, turn 90 degrees, wait for explosions to cease. But Hedgehog attacked from ahead while maintaining sonar contact. The U-boat commander heard splashes, assumed failure, and maintained course, sailing directly into the kill zone. By the time commanders realized the British weren't dropping depth charges, the bombs had already struck. Lieutenant Klaus Hermann, U-223's sole surviving officer, explained the psychological trap during interrogation. "We heard the splashes at 02:17 hours, 20, perhaps 25 impacts. Hydrophone operator reported, 'No detonations, Herr Kapitän. The captain ordered us to maintain depth and course. Standard procedure: if depth charges haven't exploded, the attack has failed.' Then at 02:18, impact. The forward torpedo room ruptured. We surfaced immediately. The British ship was still ahead of us, still tracking. They fired again. Second impact destroyed the conning tower. We abandoned ship. 42 crew lost." The tactical asymmetry was profound. British escorts knew exactly when Hedgehog hit. Silence meant miss, explosion meant kill. German submarines experienced only confusion. Splashes meant what? Attack? Feint? Equipment malfunction? The uncertainty forced submarines to remain deep longer, maneuver more frantically, and surface in desperation, making them vulnerable to conventional gunfire. Dönitz's frustration was compounded by the Kriegsmarine's inability to develop effective countermeasures. Bold acoustic torpedoes, designed to home on propeller noise, proved ineffective against escorts using Hedgehog. The attacking ship remained ahead of the submarine, outside the torpedo's acquisition cone. Pillenwerfer decoys, which released chemical bubbles to confuse ASDIC, worked against depth charges but failed against Hedgehog's sustained tracking. Diving deeper simply delayed inevitable destruction. Hedgehog bombs sank to 750 feet before fuses deactivated. The strategic impact was measurable. In March 1943, German U-boats sank 108 Allied merchant ships. In April, 56 ships. In May, 34 ships. British escorts equipped with Hedgehog achieved kill rates 5 times higher than those using only depth charges. The Royal Navy was destroying U-boats faster than German shipyards could replace them. Dönitz wrote in his war diary on May 24th, "The enemy has achieved tactical superiority through means we do not fully understand. Wolfpack tactics are no longer viable. We are withdrawing boats from the North Atlantic pending technical solutions." It was Germany's first major strategic retreat of the war. The weapon they'd dismissed as primitive British improvisation had shattered the U-boat campaign. And British intelligence knew they'd won, because German radio traffic exploded with confused orders, contradictory reports, and desperate requests for clarification. HMS Vanek intercepted one such message on May 15th. U-boat command to all Atlantic boats. Report all encounters with forward-thrown weapons. Describe splash patterns, detonation characteristics, acoustic signatures. Intelligence requires detailed assessment. Commander Howard smiled grimly. They still don't understand what's killing them. His assessment was correct. Post-war analysis revealed that German naval intelligence produced 7 separate technical evaluations of Hedgehog between March and August 1943. None correctly identified the weapon's true advantage, maintaining sonar contact through the attack. German analysts fixated on contact fuses, forward-firing mechanisms, and bomb trajectories, all secondary factors. They never grasped that the weapon's primary innovation was operational, not technological. The blindness had cultural roots. German naval doctrine emphasized technological supremacy, superior submarines, advanced torpedoes, sophisticated tactics. The concept that simple weapons employed cleverly could defeat superior technology contradicted their institutional worldview. British forces were presumed methodical but unimaginative. How could they innovate faster than the Kriegsmarine's engineering establishment? Yet that's precisely what happened. Hedgehog was invented in 18 months by a team including school teachers and fairground engineers. German acoustic torpedoes required 4 years of development and never achieved operational success. The Allies won not through superior resources, but through decentralized innovation that empowered unconventional thinkers to solve impossible problems. By June 1943, the Battle of the Atlantic had turned decisively. Allied shipping losses dropped from 600,000 tons monthly to 200,000 tons. U-boat losses increased from 12 monthly to 40. Admiral Horton wrote, "The Hedgehog has achieved what Admiralty planners claimed impossible. We are sinking submarines faster than Germany builds them. The weapon's psychological impact equals its physical destruction. German commanders fear what they cannot comprehend." The war would continue 2 more years, but the outcome was settled. Britain would not starve. The convoys would reach port, and the weapon, dismissed as ridiculous garden furniture, had saved millions of lives. May 8, 1945. Liverpool. Victory in Europe. HMS Vannock sailed into Gladstone Dock for the final time, mission complete. Commander Howard stood on the bridge, watching crowds celebrate along the waterfront. Church bells rang across the city. Union Jacks flew from every building. The war was over, and Britain had survived. Starving, exhausted but unconquered, the statistics told the story Hedgehog had written in blood and steel. Between January 1943 and May 1945, Royal Navy vessels equipped with Hedgehog engaged 268 German and Italian submarines. 71 destroyed outright, a 26.5% kill rate. Depth charges, by comparison, achieved 6% success over the same period. Hedgehog sank more U-boats than any other British anti-submarine weapon, more than aircraft. More than mines, more than combined destroyer actions. The weapon's tactical advantages had multiplied during operational refinement. By late 1944, escort groups employed coordinated Hedgehog attacks. 3 ships firing sequentially, herding submarines into overlapping kill zones. The Combined Tactics Manual described the evolution. The Hedgehog transformed anti-submarine warfare from reactive depth-charge gambling to proactive precision hunting. Escorts no longer guessed where submarines might be. They tracked continuously and struck with accuracy. But Hedgehog's legacy transcended combat statistics. The weapon validated decentralized innovation over institutional conservatism. Lieutenant Commander Goodeve, the Canadian professor who invented Hedgehog, became Director of Miscellaneous Weapons Development, an organization that produced 47 major innovations during the war, from the Hedgehog to degaussing systems to the Oropesa mine-sweeping gear. Prime Minister Churchill wrote, "The Department of Miscellaneous Weapons proved that unconventional problems require unconventional thinkers. We won this war, not solely through industrial might, but through empowering intelligent individuals to challenge established doctrine." The personnel who developed and deployed Hedgehog received recognition belatedly. Commander Howard was awarded the Distinguished Service Order in June 1945. His citation read, "For exceptional skill and determination in anti-submarine warfare, achieving 5 confirmed U-boat kills and 3 probable kills using innovative tactics." Lieutenant Davies received the Distinguished Service Cross. The crew of HMS Vannock received collective commendation, formal acknowledgement that ordinary sailors had mastered extraordinary weapons, yet many heroes remained unrecognized. The Birmingham Small Arms Company workers who manufactured Hedgehog systems under Luftwaffe bombardment received no medals. The Royal Navy ASDIC operators, who maintained sonar contact through chaos, received no public acknowledgement. The merchant sailors who survived convoy battles because Hedgehog killed the submarines, hunting them, never knew the weapon's name. Post-war analysis by the Royal Navy's historical section quantified Hedgehog's impact. Without Hedgehog, Allied shipping losses would have continued at February 1943 rates, 600,000 tons monthly. Over 24 months, this equals 14.4 million additional tons lost. Britain's food imports would have collapsed by autumn 1943, potentially forcing negotiated peace before D-Day invasion became viable. Hedgehog's deployment prevented Britain's starvation and enabled Allied victory. The weapon's influence extended beyond World War II. Post-war anti-submarine systems adopted Hedgehog's fundamental principles: forward-firing weapons, contact fuses, sustained sonar tracking. The American Weapon Alpha rocket-thrown depth bomb, developed in the 1950s, was Hedgehog's direct descendant. Soviet RBU-6000 anti-submarine rocket launchers mimicked Hedgehog's forward-firing doctrine. Modern navies worldwide employ weapons systems whose lineage traces to a ridiculous British invention that violated every rule of traditional naval warfare. Commander Howard attended a classified debriefing at the Admiralty in August 1945. Rear Admiral Geoffrey Blake, who'd called Hedgehog tactically unsound in 1942, stood before assembled officers. "Gentlemen," Blake said quietly, "I was wrong. This weapon succeeded not despite its unconventional design, but because of it. We presumed naval warfare required adherence to doctrine established at Jutland. We forgot that doctrine serves victory, not tradition." The officers and crew who employed Hedgehog demonstrated something essential: the willingness to abandon failed methods, embrace ridicule, and trust that innovation offers salvation. It was as close to an apology as the Royal Navy's institutional hierarchy permitted. Howard wrote in his diary, "Blake is right, though he'd never admit the deeper truth. We won because we empowered school teachers and engineers to solve problems that admirals couldn't. We won because desperation forced humility. We won because we valued results over reputation. That lesson matters more than any specific weapon." The post-war years brought personal reckonings. Howard returned to his family in Somerset, wife and 2 daughters he'd barely seen in 4 years. The transition to civilian life was difficult. Nightmares of burning convoys haunted his sleep. The sound of fireworks triggered panic attacks. But gradually, peacetime routines replaced wartime trauma. He became headmaster of a rural grammar school, teaching history to children born during the war he'd fought to win. Lieutenant Davies emigrated to Canada, working as a mechanical engineer in Halifax, the city whose convoys he'd protected. The Vannock's crew dispersed. Some stayed in the Navy, most returned to civilian occupations. They remained connected through annual reunions, gathering each May to remember fallen comrades and celebrate survival. The HMS Vannock was decommissioned in 1946 and sold for scrap in 1947. The Hedgehog system that had killed 5 U-boats was removed, stored in a naval warehouse, and forgotten. Decades later, a preserved Hedgehog system was installed at the Imperial War Museum, labeled Anti-Submarine Spigot Mortar Type Hedgehog, 1942-1945, responsible for destroying 71 enemy submarines, the most successful anti-submarine weapon of World War II. In 1983, Howard attended the museum's exhibit opening. He was 81 years old, walking with a cane, one of the last surviving Hedgehog commanders. A young curator asked him what the weapon meant. Howard considered carefully. "It meant that when Britain faced extinction, we abandoned pride and embraced what worked. It meant that ordinary people, engineers, sailors, factory workers, saved the nation through ingenuity and courage. It meant that unconventional solutions, however ridiculous they appear, deserve respect when conventional methods fail." The curator asked if he'd been frightened, facing U-boats in the North Atlantic. Howard smiled, terrified, every day, but more frightened of doing nothing. We fought not because we were brave, but because surrender meant the end of everything we valued. Hedgehog gave us a chance. We took it. That's the entire story. Commander James Howard died in 1989. His obituary in the Times mentioned his DSO, his teaching career, his family. It did not mention Hedgehog. The weapon remained obscure outside naval history circles, but the 71 U-boats Hedgehog destroyed saved approximately 35,000 Allied merchant sailors and enabled delivery of 14 million tons of supplies that kept Britain fighting. Those lives and that cargo represent Hedgehog's true legacy, not the weapon itself, but the survival it enabled and the principle it proved, that ridiculous ideas, properly executed, can change the world. The Hedgehog proved that Britain's greatest strength wasn't just military might, it was the willingness to think differently when everything depended on it. If you found this story of unconventional innovation compelling, subscribe to explore more untold stories of British ingenuity during history's darkest hours. What other ridiculous ideas changed warfare? Comment below with your thoughts. Until next time, remember, sometimes the most effective weapon is the one everyone mocked.